sung short. It's the Purple Rock Survivor podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor podcast. I am your host, Andy, and with me this week is your favorite co-host, Brad. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back for the first time in how long? I don't know how last time I was on the pod even.
It's been a while. I believe it was in the before times. Not due to a lack of desire, but more you're
right,
a busy
well,
man.
I was going to say that like there was. Well, no, I was going to chalk it up to the show was off for a year. And so that'll factor into how long it takes to get back on the pod.
Right. And this is also just the last season. It didn't the stars didn't align last season, but that's all right because we were saving you for a good episode, I think.
Oh yeah, I was very happy to get this episode because you had asked me to do this on Monday or Tuesday. It was like you caught me at a good time because it's spring break and I've actually got the time in my schedule to do it. And as we were rolling through the episode, I was like, oh my God, I got a good one. I was so happy to land on week 3.
Yeah, this is the first one that I really feel like is something to really dive into, just beyond the general, hey, things are going all right, and I'm happy with it. So how have you felt about the season up until this point, including this episode?
No, I think I felt exactly the same. I think 1 and 2 are like, okay, cool. Survivor's back. Glad to watch it. We'll see if this goes anywhere. And then this week, things absolutely popped off. And so now I feel like I'm fully on board just because I feel like we're hitting the right blend of smart and stupid, right? Like you tilt too far in one direction, you tilt too far into smart. And it's like, okay, it's very mechanical game body. Like we're maximizing all of our moves. Too far stupid obviously isn't that much fun to watch, but we're like hitting right down the middle. So yeah, I'm definitely digging this season, and I feel like we actually are getting that roller coaster that they always talk about, because I feel like you start a lot of seasons and they'll use that metaphor of like it's the roller coaster and I'm getting strapped in, but I actually feel like we are hitting the highs and the lows versus sometimes it just feels very methodical and sort of paint by numbers at times.
Yeah, I'll say I don't know if I'm coming off this episode feeling like we're getting a lot of the smart and the dumb. I think there was some there wasn't all dumbness in this episode, but that was definitely the takeaway. So for me, that led to a fun experience. Also, not just the mistakes, but there were like a lot of unique circumstances in this episode. Unique largely due to the fact that these things could not have happened before. So that led to some interest, but I'm not yet ready to say that we have smart gameplay yet. I think there was one. And we'll see from there. So I think we'll focus tonight on the kind of the cascading series of errors that was this episode. Normally we lead off with the biggest thing, which was tribal council. But I think in order to talk about it, we need to talk about what got us there. So yeah, a lot of dumb stuff on display, which was hilarious. We'll start with one that wasn't as big, but I think was the first one. And that's when we get back from tribal council from last week, and Maryanne's like, hey, guess what, guys? Extra vote. Why and why then?
I don't know why, because I feel like it's always such a thing of don't reveal your advantages. Every time people do it, and I shouldn't say every time, but 9 times out of 10, it'll come back to bite you in the ass. And I feel like the only way that you can rationalize what Marianne did is that if she feels all in on some sort of death pact that she's made with these other 3 Takus, that like, we're getting to the merge, it's the 4 of us, ride or die. And so you want to share this with your allies, even then, not a great idea. I think the other 2 things that you could use to rationalize this are that they know that she went on the journey and they know that she had to make a choice. So either you tell them I got the extra vote, or you lie and say, nope, I've got no vote, which then makes you even more of a target if they think they can vote you out without you voting. And also, I don't think Marianne's a very good liar.
Yes.
And I think she might even say as much.
Yeah. Honestly, that's why I almost like I didn't have this originally in the breakdown. I agree that it was a mistake. I first saw. It's just I think I've already pegged her as not a game player. So at this point, it's like, you're not changing my mind by something that looks bad. I don't think she's here to play a good game of Survivor. I think she's here to be an effervescent personality and that sort of thing. But yeah, there's a point. It would be like, what did she tell them when she went on the journey? Because, of course, none of these people know what the journey entails. But anybody who knows anything about Survivor assumes that if you are taken to this extra place, there's going to be something. So if she had told them basically what happened, then yes, this was her first confirmation of whether she gets the vote or not, you know. So if she was completely honest, which she should not have been, but okay, it would have been like, I risked something to maybe get a vote. I don't know if I'll have it or not until I get there, in which case, you know, it would make sense why she got back. Is like, it was successful. If it was that she hadn't told them at all that there was a potential for getting an extra vote, and then in that moment decides to reveal it to everyone, I disagree with that. And yeah, we'll see it throughout this episode. It seems to be a repeating pattern since we've gotten back. Everybody always wants to tell people things, and it's rarely a good idea.
I think the other thing about Maryanne as well, like her specific history that might contribute to that, is the fact that she said that her first season was David versus Goliath, which means that she only started watching like, 2-3 years ago. And then since has watched everything except 6 episodes of Tocantins, apparently.
Yeah, which the commenter on our site, I think, nailed it.
Season.
Is that those episodes aren't on Daily Motion. So I think that's totally it. As soon as I read that, it's like, I think that's it.
That makes total
streaming,
sense.
And that's why she's missing. And that's why she has a catalog that she's seen everything but 6 episodes of Tocantins, because she probably wants to.
Right. But if you've compiled all 40 seasons, right, down into the span of 2 or 3 years, I think you can definitely be a super fan. You'll definitely be like, you know, absorbed and obsessed with the show, but maybe not necessarily in the analytical way that would, you know, throw up that red flag of like, hey, don't tell people that you've got, you know, this like loaded cache of stuff. Because now it's not only the extra vote, but if you're going to go hunting for idols with people, like you're all going to walk down the trail as a pack of 4, like, okay, you found the idol, and now that's 2 things that are putting a target on your back.
Yeah, honestly, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think you were the first one to tell us that there was a video where she said she started watching a David versus Goliath. I think it was you. It was not. It came up, and that did make me think. And I don't know what the answer is, but it is something to think about. It's like, what's the different experience, and what does that do to a Survivor player? Forget a fan. I'm not gatekeeping. You know, the best time to watch Survivor is when you start. But experiencing like all 40 seasons with a fire hose within like one binge, how do you then process the information? Because the rest of us, you know, you have time, and there's like a dialogue that happens with the show and the viewers and the evolution of it. But if you're watching it all at once, even if you're watching it in order, which she wasn't, you know, she started there and then worked way, and I don't know, maybe from David and Goliath, she maybe started at 1 and then caught up when she caught up. I don't know. But what does that do to your understanding of what the game is? And I think that's like that's pretty common for a lot of modern players. If you weren't alive when it was starting, or, you know, a child not watching that sort of level of you know, television, then you didn't have a chance to watch it. And, you know, especially this modern, like the younger era generation, like binge watching old things is just what they do, you know. That's why, you know, The Office and Friends are suddenly popular again. But yeah, I do wonder what that, like, how they interpret that stuff, because like we view it as eras, and that's what you did then, and then like things changed. But if you saw it all in like a period of months, do you incorporate it differently? Not even worse, just differently. And I don't know if that'll ever be an answer, especially since I don't talk to people who have experienced it that way. And I'm not as interested in what a fan does. I'm interested in what it's like for then the person who became a fan that way and then plays.
So I'll say from a more psychological, educational sort of perspective, basically, and this is true over any span of time, but people tend to remember the highs and the lows.
Yeah.
Like you remember the extremes, you don't remember what happened in the middle. So Maryanne could very easily be coming into this remembering all of like the big, you know, big moves, quote, quote, TM, like resume building sort of quote, quote stuff. And that may be what she's walking in with a goal of. I mean, to some degree, all players do that. But that may be her entire context for what constitutes good gameplay based on what she's retained through that binge watch. As opposed to, like you say, us who watched it week to week, like when there were those subtle moves, those smaller moves or things that kind of worked but could have been better, like we have time to sit and digest it, like you said, for people like us, talk it out on a podcast, talk it out in, you know, a forum or a comment, whatever. And then that sort of through reinforcement gets, you know, incorporated over and over into our mindsets as we, you know, watch the next episode or watch the next season. So yeah, definitely, I think compressing it down on that binge timeline causes you to miss those aspects and not quite pick up on the subtleties that could still constitute good gameplay.
Yeah, when you listen to, like, you know, crusty old survivors talk about the game now, especially like, say, ones that were in season 40, they say the biggest difference between, like, you know, their time and the modern game is speed, right? You know, and now we're in even a faster speed run with the 26 days. And I wonder if that's going to be the way it is, not just because of like what the show is doing, and certainly the show seems to like engineer that their engine runs on moments and such, but I wonder if that sped up gameplay is also just a result of a sped up watching, a sped up experience of Survivor. You know, for me, it's always been a pretty slow thing, and I even make sure it's slower by just dropping the show altogether in the off season. Which again, I'm not saying is the better way. It's just this is a new way of experiencing content that didn't exist for most of the show's history, and I wonder what that is like. If anybody has any thoughts, again, none of you have played probably, so that part, but you might have ideas at least. Like, hey, when I watched it, this was my understanding of Survivor. And honestly, what would be really interesting is people who binged and then caught up, and then what the experience, like the week to week experience, was like. Yeah, but there's just no value in showing your extra vote. The time to tell people that you have an extra vote is right before you're going to cast it. And I don't mean like right before tribal council, but in that planning process, when you know that extra vote will matter to you and your allies. Because at that point, people are only going to be happy. They're going to be like, oh, thank God, I thought we couldn't. And that could also solidify like people that wouldn't necessarily, you know, want to join in a tie action. They'll be like, it's not going to be a tie. We're going to win because I have this. But anything other than that is just another thing to strike fear into people, even though, you know, it's just an extra vote. We'll get into that. What is more fearful is the idol. That is when you know where it is and you don't just lose it. My God, like that. And honestly, it's a great moment. And also just what stage setting by the editors, because you watch the scene with Daniel, you know, just losing, you know, not only the idol, but also his water bottle, and not realizing that like he's got the rest of Mike's clue, like cradling his nutsack at that very moment. And it's like, this guy is just a hot mess. And that was foreboding. That's foreboding.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of that scene?
I mean, the only way you can describe it is comical. I wish they had played up a little bit more the fact that Daniel had to help Mike find his idol at all last week. Like Mike had buried it and couldn't even find it. This time he gives it away and then they can't find it. I mean, at the end of it, that's all that scene is good for, is the comedy of it. But it was just just an excellent, you know, morsel in the buffet of errors that we got this episode.
And Mike's reaction let us know that, like, this is obviously the most extreme instance of it, but he wasn't terribly surprised that Daniel was messing it up. And we did get a scene beforehand with, I think it might have been Lydia or Chanelle, just talking like Daniel's always misplacing stuff.
It was Lydia. If I remember, it was Lydia telling hi.
Yes, I think that's accurate. And then that moment, it is just like, did he really just do that? And frankly, what would have made it better is if, say, Hi or Lydia stumble upon this idol that he had just left there. Which I think
actually would have gotten closer to that scenario that you and Matt were talking about last week, if someone just stumbles upon an idol and production has to step in and say, that's actually not yours. We have to take that back from you.
Yeah, no, maybe we're building to it, right? We had Mike lose it, and we thought that somebody would find it, and then we had Daniel just kind of leave it there because he's so fixated on the fine print of one thing that he fails to notice that he's got the fucking idol, which is kind of the more important thing. I did appreciate that he wanted to go back and read that, because that actually taught us something that we didn't know, is that this idol has changed from last year. Last season, if it didn't activate by the merge, poof, gone, you missed out. This season, you get it and you get your vote back, which is an interesting little tweak. Honestly, a tweak that I'm not sure why they did, because it did activate. You know, they didn't get like the negative answer. Maybe because it took to the last moment with Nasir. They're like, oh, that was pretty close. Let's make sure we don't do that again. But yeah, no, it was hilarious. Yeah, only worse to come.
Well, I will say, I also am wondering what happens if Daniel should ever find himself in possession of an idol of advantage of his own, right? Like, it's bad enough that he lost Mike's, but at least Mike was like, where the fuck is it? Like, you need to give it back to me. And that's the trigger that, like, oh, right, I don't have it on my person. If this was Daniel's idol,
he wouldn't have known he lost it. He would know to retrace his steps.
Yeah.
Oh man, you just keep giving me a checklist of things I need to see. So the dumbest thing that happened in the entire episode, in my mind, is Chanelle's decision at the Shipwheel Island. And I got a bit of your live reaction to it. So we get a scene of her and Omer, just talking it over, really seeming, like they had bonded or whatever, that everybody loves Omer. And it's made clear two things. One, and this is, hilariously optimistic on their part, if there's a way we both can get rid of the reward, let's do it. But hey, man, they don't know. So I guess that'd be fun. It'd be nice. But even more, Chanelle very clearly saying, I cannot risk my vote. And then you get the SpongeBob 5 minutes later, and then, my God, what is she doing? Tell the people your reaction when you're watching.
So my live sort of reaction, because Andy referenced it, I like, when I know that I'm in a podcast, I take notes just so I can like remember how I felt in the moment. So the lines as I wrote them were, Chanelle wouldn't risk her vote, right? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Then Chanelle, 3 exclamation points. Then Chanelle in all caps with 3 exclamation points. I couldn't believe what I was watching as it was happening. Because, yeah, like you said, like, okay, let's get an advantage if it both helps us and be super chummy with Omer. But exactly like Chanelle said, you know that you need your vote for this tribal. You know that you are going to tribal. And I'm pretty sure she knew that Mike couldn't vote. I'm pretty sure that information had been given to her at this point.
Daniel shared the information about Mike's idol with her last week, yes.
Right. So, like, I don't really see what good risking does for you, because all it does is open you up to exactly what happened, which is this tie vote where you no longer have control. It's just like, by her own words, she could not risk her vote. And then 5 minutes later, I think I'm going to risk my vote, and swings the wheel. Like, it doesn't track.
No, I'm here to play big. And it's like, then why say that other thing? And more, and really, especially, why say that other thing? Because by saying that other thing, you now have near guaranteed your lack of success in this venture. Like, you should even, like, I would even understand that she would like, oh man, I really wanted to do that, but I basically gave Omer permission to do this. I told him that I would not be risking my vote. Therefore, I cannot risk my vote. But nope. You got to take the risk. Risk it to get the biscuit, and whatever the phrase was. This one, Omer said it, not her. But yeah. And what's should really be stressed, and I don't think it's been stressed enough out there, and I understand why, because most people are just like, oh, what? The thing she's risking for is not that valuable. Extra votes are not that valuable. They're nice to have. I can't think of the list off the top of my head right now, but I don't believe they've come in handy very often. I believe one time it also required an idol nullifier for it to work. But you know what's much more valuable than an extra vote? A vote. A vote is so many more important. So, like, what I want to see from people, and no, it hasn't happened yet, and maybe it would never make the edit if anybody said it, would be when they see that, they'd be like, an extra vote, who cares? And then just not risk it for that reason. But in this scenario, she knows she needs it. She told us, and most importantly, she told Omer, and then she just goes for it. And I think people are just so programmed that advantages matter. You gotta, play big in this game, that they're not even thinking about what the advantage is, because it doesn't matter. It's an extra vote. The one vote you needed was the one you gave up.
Yeah, and it also gets back to that thing of how everyone is like, play your advantages, don't go home with them in your pocket. And, I have to get through this tribal to even use them, whatever. But it's like, it's exactly that. If you don't get through this tribal, who cares about this extra vote? Like, you know what the numbers are. You know that you need to get through this tribal. So compromising this specific tribal where you know you are going to be up for elimination, it just, the cost and benefits, that analysis just wasn't soundly done here.
And I've always been somebody who is, promoted the idea of taking risks in Survivor, that people too often view the absence of risk taking as a lack of risk, which is wrong, because sometimes when you let an opportunity pass by, that was the risk. Which I think maybe some people in comments, or obviously the many people who listen to now play this show, take ideas like that means you always got to take risks. No, you just need to properly assess that not doing anything isn't always safety. That is just putting off losing a little bit longer, but you are down that path, and sometimes a riskier path is more important because that leads to potential success, whereas the non-risk path leads to no potential success. This isn't that. This is, I will not get the vote the way I want, the all-important first vote, all for an extra vote that may or may not ever be useful. Most of the time is not. And the one thing, like when she does it, is like, I'm just figuring, okay, well then she's decided to let go of Jenny. And like, that would almost be valid, right? It's like, I'm in the middle. It's going to go whatever way, Daniel or myself decide. And really myself, Daniel's going to do whatever I say. I would rather have a shot at an extra vote than have Jenny. That would make sense to me. I would still rather just, again, vote the way I want to vote, the allies that I feel most comfortable with. But when she takes that, I figure, okay, well, so, she's made that decision. But no, she gets back, and now she's trying to engineer a split vote. And that's what it obviously does not work out. And we'll talk about that. I will say it's one of those things that if it had worked out, she would have looked really smart at. What did you think of her decision to split the vote as opposed to just say vote for Jenny?
Well, in the context of her potentially losing her vote, I think it makes sense. I will say, trying to start up a vote split is like, I don't feel either sort of way. I feel where she really messed up is the fact that Hai offered her the vote split that she wanted and then started scrambling and put his hackles up and basically put him on red alert. Like, she comes in saying, Hai comes in rather saying, we need to split 3-1 and one vote needs to go on Mike. As soon as Hai says that, Chanelle needs to be saying, great, Hai, we're on the same page. You, me, and Daniel, let's vote for Jenny, and Lydia will vote for Mike. And there's the 3-1.
Yeah.
Chanelle gets exactly what she wants. She doesn't have to, rustle feathers with Hai. But no, instead, she's so fixated on, this is the plan that I had in mind for how we get this done, that immediately when she pushes back, Hai's on the defensive, and now he has his guard up the entire time.
The thing is, she was right. Like, when she said, how does that make sense? It didn't, I don't know what I think in comments, somebody figured out that Hai is trying to protect against the shot in the dark rather than an idol play. Fair enough. Again, maybe Daniel already told him that there's really no idol in play. Because it sounds like Daniel has been there telling everybody anything. And I have no hard time believing that based on the evidence of Daniel's gameplay. I feel like this has happened before in Survivor where people were given what they wanted, but they talked people out of it. I think in Caramoan, Corinne did this around the merge and got herself, I think, voted out. And I think you're right in that she had come up with this plan, and from the moment she takes that risk and her boat ride back, she's like, how am I going to fix this? How am I going to play this off? Protect against this? Just not say anything. You can let people screw themselves over. You don't have to be the mastermind in charge of it. Because, they do that. It's all good. I think another way to do it would be to ignore the vote split altogether, because those are always complicated and, fraught. All it takes is one person to vote. And just say, we need to get out Mike. He's got an idol that isn't useful. If we blindside him, but leave him in the game, he might have an idol next week. That would be really easy. And of course, if the votes are on Mike, then in a revote scenario, the fact that he doesn't have a vote no longer matters. Jenny would have a vote. You would still win 2-1. Yeah. That's all right. Mm-hmm. That's the math. I'm going to need you to check my math throughout the whole time. That's your job.
That feels Right. It's spring break. I don't have to do math right now.
That's right.
How dare you make me?
Yeah, math is for work. Talking is for fun.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and like again, if Tony had come up with a plan where it's like, all right, I'm going to engineer a vote split, it would be genius, but only if it would have paid off. And I do like that the show gave us that high, like, caught something in her, behavior, which is weird because, like, she was correct in correcting him, but I guess it's just tone, so good for high. I have something about Daniel managing the tiebreaker, and now I can't even remember what. Oh, yeah.
Well, he didn't. He didn't manage the tiebreaker.
Yes. So when we get
for it, I don't think he managed it.
Yes, I should have been more specific because yes, this obviously is the highlight. We get to tribal council, vote, no votes. I loved the constant cuts to high, trying to figure out where are all the votes not. My man Daniel, come on, man. I mean, at this point, this is why almost you want to vote like podcast right after, but it's impossible because you didn't even watch it this morning. I watched it while you were sleeping. You do not start a negotiation with no matter what's going to happen. I am going to roll over, but let's talk it out. That was the worst negotiation in Survivor history, correct?
Yes. I mean, I don't, there's no way around that. Just like, if you're going to buy a car, you don't open with, I'd really love to buy this for $1,700, but I know we'll never get there. So let's start at 20,000. So like, it doesn't make any sense. Start.
No matter what's going to happen here, I need to leave with that specific car. All right, let's talk.
Man, especially when it's not even like, I mean, it is that high has something that Daniel wants, but it's more like, I don't understand the logic. Like, you need to essentially deter high from doing what you don't want to do, but your opening line is, I'm amenable to what you want to do as long as I get out of it safe. Then you're not actually going to get what you want in terms of the outcome of the vote.
Yeah. And again, if he had just decided before he even opened his mouth, sorry, Jenny, I have options and you don't. Okay. But you don't say that. And I think so much of what he was doing from that moment on was trying to save face with both like guilt of sending Jenny home, but also with Mike. Because I think, again, he knows he's not going to go to rocks. He already knows that I'm not even the strong arm. And so he kept trying to put the blame on somebody else, that he was blameless in this scenario. My hands are tied. So, what are you going to do? I want to avoid rocks. So I'm not even going to pretend like I have some kind of leverage here, even though there was a lot of leverage that they could have used. The fact that, yes, High, you could win this, but there's going to be more people left. And at some point, they're going to have votes. This is a better time for you to join a majority. I think
and I actually want. Oh.
No, you go.
Oh, I was going to say, like, on that note, though, I wonder if he actually would have been better served if he just, I mean, one, obviously, if he didn't say his opening line, but if he didn't say anything at all, if you just let High go first and High say, I'm not moving off of Jenny, and Daniel says, okay, then it's Jenny, we're done, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you don't go through the whole rigmarole of throwing Chanelle under the bus and trying to smooth it over with Jenny and in that result, just pissing off Mike. Like, would you piss off Chanelle and Mike by voting out Jenny? Yes, they're not going to be happy that you folded. But at the end of the day, you're justifying it solely by, I don't want to put myself in danger by going to Rock Sunday 7, right? Which is what he opened with, but then kept digging the hole. And you're just like, Daniel, put down the shovel, right? But if all he did was say, I don't want to go to Rocks, I think that's reasonable. And if that's all it was, it would have been fine. It's the fact that that's where he opened and then just kept going from there.
Yeah, if he says, I don't want to go to Rocks, so I'm going to vote for Jenny, fair. That's fine. You weren't the idiot who lost your vote, which only describes Chanelle. Obviously, Mike is kind of blameless in this. But to use that as before we start negotiations, and I have a whole lot more to say, I just want you to know that I will not push this issue whatsoever. I likened it to, all the cards are out. Final round of betting is like, no matter what, I can't go all in. Well, then the only thing, unless it's a brilliant bluff, is to push all in and take that pot. And that's what, honestly, credit to High for at least like making it seem like he had something like, oh, I'm sorry about this, Jenny. But he already knew he won before any of this. It's like, okay, so you're not going to do it. Then I'm not changing my vote. And yeah, so all of Daniel's, what he's doing there with like Chanelle is he's just trying to shift the blame to somebody else, if not fully, although I suspect fully to someone else. That's why he's trying to put her name to it, at least to share. And that was really sad. I get it a bit though, because as much as, Chanelle liked to, feel insulted that she was being thrown under the bus, it's like, it's really nice that you got to opt out of this decision here. But we know what your decision was, because that was another mistake that they made, is at tribal council, Chanelle was mouthing Lydia over to, Daniel in full view of eye. But yeah, so she's just trying to say blameless, like her hands are clean, because she was dumb enough to risk her vote. Whereas, no, I understand the impulse of wanting to draw her in. But the way Daniel was doing it is, it's like, it's her decision, not mine. But it really, you want to do is, this is our decision. This is what Chanelle was going to do. If she had a vote, if, she walked up to that thing and, had a vote, she would have written down, Lydia as well. So I understand that impulse, but nothing about the way he did it worked out. What did you think of Chanelle at the tribal council?
I think she was rightfully angry with Daniel, because he really was chucking her under the bus. You really don't have much to do if you don't have a vote. So all she can really do is chime in. I think it's not so much even the fact that Daniel's throwing her under the bus, but also just sort of the sudden abruptness of it. Like, she was blindsided by all of a sudden him turning on her, which I kind of understand, right? Because Daniel's doing it, I don't even think to save face with Mike or Jenny. I think specifically to save face with Hai.
Yes.
Like, that whole thing was aimed at Hai
100%.
saying, I trust you and you haven't lost my trust and I want to work with you. But then if that's really, how you feel, like, then why were you voting against him at all in the first place? Why did you not just work with him as opposed to, trying to cut out his number one ally? Yeah. So I think all of that abruptness is where that's coming from. And if I was in Chanelle's shoes, I don't think I could have behaved any differently. I wouldn't have had a better poker face about it.
Yeah, no, and I agree. He was trying to say, hi, it wasn't me, it was her. Like, that part is just so wrong and bad. It was more when she started to act like, hey man, this isn't me. It's like, well, it's also kind of you, You only get to be blameless in this scenario because you were the stupid one who doesn't have a vote in the first place. Right. So yeah, like, no points for her, many negative points for him. The one person that did get lots of, plus points is Hai. I thought Hai, and this isn't a big leap to say, but I thought he did well in this whole play, including the decision to switch his vote, which, if everybody had votes like people normally do, that shouldn't have mattered at all. But I think what, he's picking up on is, along with the suspicions that he had back at camp, is that they really want me to do this thing. So while I can't quite understand how doing that would hurt or help me, I'm going to do the opposite. And I guess one thing is, if he's expecting 4 people to have votes, then it's like, maybe me voting the same way as Lydia is going to create a 2-2-2-2. But I think it just could be as basic as, they're trying to play me to do this thing, so I'm not going to do that thing. And I really like the way that he played that off.
And I also think it demonstrated that he's really good under pressure, because there have been players in similar situations where as soon as they think something's off, they're out of their seat, kicking off a live tribal, trying to get in people's ears, which if Hai did that in a scenario, he would have been done. He would have been cooked, right? So the fact that he was able to sit there, sort of hold his composure and then implement what he needed to do in the voting booth, which, like you said, doesn't guarantee success, right? But I don't think kicking off a live tribal does either. I think that's, hats off to him for having the wherewithal to know that that wasn't the right move.
Yeah, no, I just really impressed that, he was able to pick up on those things and then just figure out something, because, not every, but I'd say the majority of post-game interviews, there's always like, oh, I knew it was happening. And then it's like, okay, but you didn't do anything. So did you really actually know? Or you just don't want to admit that you were blindsided? In this case, clearly he picked up on something and he did the thing that he could do. Yeah, no, he seems to be good under pressure, as long as that pressure, of course, isn't in the middle of the challenge, dump a bucket of fake blood on yourself, in which case maybe his decision making isn't as strong. But how often is that going to happen? Hopefully at least one more time. Look, let's talk about High right now, just in general, because he's your favorite player,
right? Yes, for gameplay reasons and for other reasons. So
because he's into math, right? That's the other reason.
Oh yeah, I think he's a data scientist. Yeah, I think he's a big math guy.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, no, he's clearly my favorite as well. And for the exact same reasons as you.
The exact same reasons. All of the reasons.
All of them. Oh, what's not to like? Yeah, so obviously the first episode was largely because it was hilarious what he did. But since then, I have liked just the way that he's been approaching everything. I kind of wish he wasn't in an alliance with Lydia. It's just because I'm getting nothing from her,
Yeah, very much that. Like, Lydia's the one who I'm just like, her, egg, I think let's also not forget that he has that weird, I forgot what they called it. It's something like a shared whatever with Drea and Lindsay. So
the amulet advantage, right?
Yeah. So if they all make it to the merge, even though I think that's going to be like a mutually assured destruction thing, because it levels up in power the more people you take out who share it. I think there is potential for him to pick up better alliance partners should he make it to the merge.
Yeah, see, if I'm Ty, I'm disappointed every time one of those people walk back. I'm like, all right, and here's the final tribe. Lindsay's still here. Because, that thing is a taunting. That's all it is. It's like, I want to be the last person standing with this thing.
Right.
But yeah, and I guess, they're both younger. Whereas the people they weren't aligned with are older. But it's just like, as much as I admired his play, it's like, but did you have to do it to like save Lydia and get rid of Jenny? Because Jenny I liked, because I am also old, It's that's the one difference. Everything else, we feel connected to High.
Right. And actually, I will say, to talk more on Jenny, because I think that's one of the things we wanted to do, was just talk a little bit about Jenny. I will say, like, I think that's a good reason. I think Jenny was, I'm not going to say a better player, but I think I got a better sense of her personality. So, and she's maybe a better character on television than Lydia would be. But I wish if people are going to say that Jenny should have stuck around over Lydia, that they use that reasoning. I feel like I saw, not necessarily on our side, it was on Twitter, which take whatever you find on Twitter with like the largest grain of salt. But there were people who were basically like, oh, wow, he kept a white woman over, another woman of color. And it's just like, okay, that's true. But also, let's not tokenize Jenny to the point that her value in your viewing experience is the fact that there's diversity on the screen. Right. Like, I think I've said this on the pod before, but it's basically like when you worship these queens specifically because they are people of color, like, you are tokenizing.
Yes. And
let's be better than that. Let's, focus on the positive aspects of her personality or gameplay or the other things that she's actually bringing to the, course of the season.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, isn't that one of the benefits that there is greater diversity, is that like the only two Asian people don't feel like they have to align, that there's, and High shares other traits with Lydia, and there's apparently other things that make up people. And that's again, back when Survivor was like, me and you are the only non-white people here, and we know how these white people act, then maybe that was the thing. But now, you can connect over the fact that we're the two young people. You can connect over the fact that they're both queer. You can connect just because you like the same jokes or whatever. Maybe he wants to partner with Lydia because he knows Lydia is going to let him do the thinking, and that's the way he wants to operate. And again, I don't know anything about Lydia, so these aren't really judgments on her. It could turn out 3 episodes from now she's a fabulous TV presence. It's just so far of the people in that tribe, I'm getting nothing out of her. She yelled during a challenge once. That's all I really got. I'm just sad because I liked Jenny. But another benefit so far of the season being like so balanced in the edit is I don't really mind that much. It's like I wasn't that attached. If I had to choose, it'd be the person that I'd formed some opinion about versus the person I hadn't formed an opinion about. But it's like generally often other seasons, I'd be really bummed because yeah, it's like, oh no, I really learned to like that person, and also there's all these other people I don't know anything about that could just leave right away. We're not there, so that's nice. But I had wished that yeah, honestly, not even that like Hai had chosen to partner with Jenny, but just that he hadn't succeeded, so that Jenny would still be around. But when the other people were messing up as badly as Daniel and Chanelle, I get it. I do think some people were giving too much credit coming off the glow of the episode. When it's like, look at all these things he accomplished. He even like made Daniel totally destroyed his relationship with his tribe. And I'm like, Daniel did that. We can't credit Hai with that at all. That's like crediting the Allies with the death of Hitler. No. This was a self-inflicted wound. And nothing is funnier than Hitler jokes. This is the internet. Yeah, and actually, one interesting is that it was Jenny. Is that this is now 2 votes in a row that were predicated on strength. Like it wasn't Mike, for instance, which it could have just been a very easy target for Mike, in that it's possible they know about his idol. That usually makes somebody a target. But I think coming off of a challenge that was as hard as the one that they just competed in, the first challenge is really hard. I think we're back to people appreciating physical strength at this stage in the game more than I think Jenny could also offer like a lot of puzzle strength, which is something. I don't know if it's a positive or negative. One thing I've always been hoping for is that like a more modern Survivor player will recognize the graver, challenge threats that present from different unique types. But I feel like this is very much like, well, we can't vote out Mike because, man, I wasn't lifting that ladder, although not that he was either. One thing that held me back from making fun of people too much for their terrible decisions, and we've done it, obviously, and we should, it's just I'm struggling with like what Survivor wants from people and what behaviors have been incentivized throughout the years. That's why I'm really interested in what it's going to be like post 41-42. It's possible that these ones are kind of trying to correct for some things, but like it's really easy to be like, these dummies, why are they going for every reward? And we've seen one person so far this season turn down the ship wheel, and that person went home. Coincidence, but still, we've seen one person in 2 seasons so far not grab the beware advantage, and that person went home not coincidentally, right? It was very much because we got to get her out of here because she knows about this, and obviously because there was 3 people and 2 people were aligned. Apparently they don't get along anymore, by the way. But yeah, it's just like it's easy to make fun of them, and Chanelle made just the worst decision based on all of her actions leading up to that moment. But I kind of get why everybody's doing this, because Survivor is so effectively for the several seasons now pushed the idea of you got to take big swings, you got to do big moves. And yeah, I know a lot of fans, scoff at that idea, but we also saw a lot of success from people who had that thing, or people who were eschewing that idea, getting taken out by all these various advantages. And I also think they're casting for it. Like, it's like they're running the marshmallow, test with a bunch of people that are addicted to marshmallows. Like, so it's like, is it that everybody is dumb, or is it just that like, this is what Survivor was looking for and they're all being set up to fail? I don't know. I don't even know if there's a question there, but you talk.
Well, I will say that I think it comes down to 2 things. I think one, them not eating is playing a big role in it.
Yes.
Right. Like I think that's playing a very big role in the style of gameplay that we're getting. Because previously when you're well fed, you can be more analytical and, be a little, move with a little more precision in terms of how you're executing these advantages and such. But I think the other thing that's changed, and it happened at the same time as them taking away the rice, is that the advantages just work differently. Right? When you had all of your extra votes, steal votes, idols and nullifiers and whatever, like, yes, there is some social element in that you need to know where the numbers are. But at the end of the day, you're working with numbers, right? It's different like permutations of if he votes this way and she votes there and we split this, right? You're just crunching numbers. A lot of the twists now sort of have these social elements, right? Where it's inherent in the way that the advantage is gained and used, right? That you have to, account for human behavior, which becomes more irrational when you don't feed these people, right? So the fact that like it's not, I think this person is voting this way and therefore I'll do this. It's like the whole prisoner's dilemma, even though people solve prisoner's dilemma all the time, right? But like when you're starving, it's harder to do. The stuff with the shared advantages and all the other stuff, like you're relying on other people to help you activate and use your advantage, which wasn't necessarily the case prior to 41.
Yeah. And I think there's also the element of like these things are, if not completely, at least semi-public. Both, people saying weird phrases, or 3 people at a challenge having to come to this decision, the 2 people at the Shipwheel Island, but also just the fact that people are going somewhere else. Everybody suspects you're going to get something, to the point where maybe you should just risk it anyway, because if you come back with nothing, nobody's going to believe you anyway. So maybe that lack of private distribution of these things is also contributing to some of the bad decision making. But it's just like everybody's like, I gotta have it. Now, what is interesting, we've seen with the Shot in the Dark so far this season, is at least they're willing to play it, because last season everybody had to have everything, but then they were hoarding it like a dragon, to the point where even like, it's an extra vote, you're never going to use it now. Nope. Waste it later. But yeah, so it's just hard to judge for me, like, oh man, these guys are all idiots, when it's just like, I think this is what the show wanted. Now, what could be interesting is maybe the show has recognized that they've instilled too much power in the random distribution of these things. And that's why they keep adding these little, gotcha or like semi-punishments, and that they're nerfing them a bit. And it would be interesting that going forward, maybe some people now will be like, I don't want to take that risk. I saw how, Chanelle lost her vote and then lost all this, or how, Brad from last season couldn't, got voted out with everything in his pocket. But so far, like this season, these people, in their mind, nothing bad has ever happened from an advantage.
Well, it's not even just in their mind, though. It's also like history bears that out. They haven't seen 41, right? The last thing that they saw was Winners at War. So I think it's very possible that we get to 43 and 44 and people do exactly what you say. If they find the beware advantage and actually stop and they're like, you know what, I know what this has done in the past, and I don't think now's the time that I want to open this. Yeah. But, keep in mind where the location is and come back to it later and see if it's still there.
Yeah, because like the most whammies I ever saw is like Tony, getting something in his bag saying he couldn't vote, but that led to an amazing episode and he still voted at this time. So, and then I guess the one time with Rob and Sandra on their, Idol Island, where one dude, I think it was Jamal, was like, hey, you took that risk and now you don't get anything but like this fucking piece of paper and a pencil or some shit. But yeah, every other time in Survivor, it's like you have something here that could guide you all the way to the game. And now, we're supposed to be like, haha, you idiot, why'd you go for this? When it's just like, the lesson has always been to go for it. So again, under no circumstances should Chanelle have gone for it. But I almost like think that feeling, that idea, and that just, you've gotten them all so hyped up about this. And as you say, they are not operating at full brain capacity. Obviously, no survivor ever really has, but worse. So it's just like, yeah, she knew that when she was there, but then she presented with this opportunity. It's like, oh no, I told myself as soon as I get an opportunity, I got to do it. So I can understand, again, well, not forgiving it at all. It was in the circumstance in which it's not important and you should not do it, especially because an extra vote really isn't that powerful. But I can get why everybody keeps making these mistakes, because it's like, this is what the game is like, twisting them up and, setting them off to do. But what I am concerned a bit about is like, are we going to see good gameplay throughout the season, or is it just going to be a bunch of people just like, I got to do something. Now, I am also the kind of person who's always said doing something is often better than doing nothing, because I get to talk about when people do things. It's harder for me to talk about when people don't do things. And my interests always align with what's best for me. But as entertaining as this episode was, I really, really liked it. I don't want to just see a bunch of dumb stuff. Now, good thing is that we at least one guy, Sean. But do you have any concerns that, like, the kind of this whole constantly having to do things, even when it might be against your better, what's good for you, is going to lead to like a bunch of dumbness? Or frankly, the lack of food is just going to constantly lead to dumbness.
I guess I'm not concerned. I think it could happen, but in terms of like the word concern specifically, I don't think I'm at that level because, like you said, this episode was entertaining, right? So if we get more stuff like this, I will be entertained. And that's really, I mean, you talk about what aligns with your personal values. That's what I value is, am I entertained by this TV show, right? There have been plenty of seasons where there was good gameplay and it was boring as hell. There have been seasons where there was bad gameplay and it was boring as hell, right? This is bad gameplay that is entertaining. So if this gives me a full season of comedy of errors, I'll be perfectly fine with it. Right now, could there be diminishing returns? Yeah, sure. Like, and I don't know that that's on my radar at the moment, and maybe it will be, 6 weeks from now, and I'll regret saying what I'm saying right now. But if it gives me the feeling that I felt this week, I am a-okay with how this season turns out.
Yeah, that's a good lesson. We don't need to concern troll when you've had a good time. I actually just do wonder because I agree. This was a delight. I enjoyed watching it. And frankly, some of the highest highs I've had in several seasons is when people are just doing dumb shit. Frankly, like the one thing that wasn't as fun that week is like, is nobody really going to try and dunk those beanbags? Come on, we need somebody to try to do a JD finger roll. But no, instead, they're just throwing it like they should. It's just one thing that has like, am I changing as a viewer? Am I going to become that person who's like, no, Gabon's great because they're a bunch of Nimrods and we get to laugh at them. Whereas in the past, I was like, that season's terrible. Nobody knows how to play Survivor. It'll be interesting. We'll have to chart that progress. So what's going to happen what do you think will happen if Vati goes back to tribal council after everything we just saw?
So I think the only thing you can count on is that Chanelle is going to target Daniel. I think that's the only thing that you can count on because he's burned the bridge. I think she's going to feel spurned. She can't trust him. And so she would rather take him out. The thing that muddies that is that Daniel, if he continues what he did this week, I was brought back to Dean Pelton, so Community in conspiracy theories and interior design. The one with all the prop guns at the end where he's just like, people just keep asking me to be a part of their plans. And I just like having fun with you guys. And it's hard for me to say no. So I think Chanelle can target Daniel, but anything else after that, it's just hard to see. I mean, I'll wager this much. I would bet that Chanelle is going to pair with Mike because I don't know how she can pair with High or Lydia. And so it's going to become High and Lydia, Chanelle and Mike, and either Daniel is the swing vote, or if Daniel ends up targeting someone in Chanelle or Mike, maybe High and Lydia are the swing vote. They're going to be, propositioned by Chanelle and Mike of like, can we just take out Daniel and make this easy and get, calmness and serenity back at our beach?
Yeah, like I think a lot of people's immediate reaction, and totally understandable, the guy was a flipping moron the last time they saw them on their TV was like, oh, Daniel's screwed. He's out now. I'm like, if somebody reveals themselves to be that poor at a competition and, their go-to move is to show you their belly, do you want to get rid of them? Like, it's like, I understand not wanting to align with him. He's proven himself a terrible ally. But if I'm High and Lydia and I have some power here, do I want to like just get rid of the guy that the other two people don't like and now set up a 2-2 dynamic? Or I can work with Daniel. What's Daniel going to do to me? He already showed me that I could. All I need to do is exhibit power moves, and I'll be able to win him over. So I think it will all depend on when they go to tribal council next. If it's next, I don't think they'd go after Daniel. I think if he isn't a high value target. Unless they suddenly want to like re-engage like what how important it is to be a tribe, but we're 4 people down now. I don't think anybody at this point in Survivor is thinking that these tribes are long. I think they will be, actually. I don't think we're going to get any kind of swap, but that's because I saw 41. These people have not, right? I think this time last season, they're anticipating a swap or a merge for like several votes now. And in which case it's like, I don't think I'd let Daniel in on the plans. Clearly, he can't be trusted with information. I wouldn't be forming an alliance with him, but I wouldn't be excited to get rid of him. This is a competition. And the fewer people that are good at it that are still in the game are probably better for you.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. And I would say, like, keep Daniel around for as long as you can keep sitting him out at challenges, which is weird. I feel like he sat out every challenge, which is, I don't know if that's a rule change. It used to be that you couldn't.
It's always
sit
just
out
about the
back-to-back
single
challenges.
episode. It never
Oh,
carries
okay.
over episode to episode.
Oh, got it. Okay. Yeah, well, yeah. So then if you're always pairing up reward and immunity, then I guess that would make sense. But I feel like he's mentioned his shoulder like multiple times since the initial injury, which also explains why he keeps sitting out, aside from maybe he's just not confident in his ability to perform regardless of the injury. But, if you can keep him on the sidelines, then he's not really impacting your, ability to perform in challenges. If it does come down to that, I would feel very nervous about having my immunity ride on whether Daniel's shoulder is going to hold up in a challenge.
Yeah. Because as much as like Lydia and Hai might be mad that Daniel lied to them, that he was voting with them, Chanelle did as well.
Mm-hmm.
And she was better at maintaining the lie after the fact. Daniel was terrible at it. So, and apparently at Tribal Council, like Hai, like actually grilled Daniel about this and kind of put it out there that he'd been double dealing. So again, like he's been exposed and he's now got nowhere to go. So I would probably try to welcome him into the fold as a pawn to use rather than somebody to get rid of, as long as you say, we can sit him out. I guess also he separated that shoulder once again, like at a later date than what we've seen, which is common for what these things happen. If you're not, resting it or rehabbing, these things can kind of come in and out. Actually, before we finish with Vati, there's another thing that, and I didn't write this down, but you're a quick thinker. A lot of people were also kind of in their disappointment for Jenny being the victim was like, oh, and she didn't even do anything wrong. And in some sense, like, yeah, especially when we're looking at all the wrong that had happened, that's true. That she seems like, a victimless or a faultless victim in, the tradition of a lot of these twists. But I think people are going too far on that as well. She didn't fuck up the way Danielle and Chanelle did. But the thing she did wrong was not form enough alliances, and thus the people were voting for her in the first place. Yeah, so like until they screwed it all up by either giving up their vote or telling people before we start here you're going to win this negotiation, and frankly earlier than that, before we start here I wanted to make clear that I am not winning Survivor. It's another thing that Daniel did at that tribal council. Daniel and Chanelle were in the better position. Nobody was voting for them because they had more socially aligned themselves to have options. So, if Jenny had played a perfect game, she wouldn't have been a target in the first place. So it's not her fault that she lost what should have been a 4-2 advantage, but, she did earn 2 votes for whichever way. And, that gets back to maybe overvaluing strength or whatever. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. That's something I wanted to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add that I don't know that, she did nothing wrong is like necessarily a great justification for why someone should stay, given that we have a different term, swap screwed, where people literally get booted from the game due to nothing that they did. It's just how the numbers fell, right? Or the rocks that were drawn, rather. So, that level of chance that is baked into the game, right, where you can make all the right analytical moves and still get voted out, that's just the way that the ball plays that time, and that's part of the game.
But so we had Hai. I think our opinions went. I don't want to do the pun there. Did Rose based on his performance at Tribal Council? Another amazing performance that we had here. That like this isn't usually the podcast where we discuss it, but it has to be. Oh my God, Jonathan! In that challenge, that was. I mean, Probst calls it out, and I think it's accurate. That might have been the most impressive single performance in a team challenge ever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like I was impressed just when he was like dragging Marianne and Omer back over to the ladder. And you look back in the big picture, that's barely 1/3 of the challenge.
Yeah.
Like the fact that he carries his tribe on his back for the rest of it, right? To get them up the beach and to actually be the one like throwing the bags up there and they're sitting on their ass just chilling while everyone else is drowning in the water.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, absolutely the best. I mean, nothing else can come to mind as, paralleling that level.
The closest is like some Aussie like speed runs with swimming.
Right.
Like he's been out there, but like, yeah, he went down there and untied The ladder, he carried the whole ladder himself. Probe says that's not nothing, and we didn't see anybody else do that. Everybody else was a team effort. Clearly, his height had an advantage. It's something you can't teach. That he could touch the bottom. But it's a little secret that I'm going to let people in on, especially people that maybe are complaining about who gets to compete in what division in high school sports. Physical advantages are built into sporting competitions. So when people say it's not fair that this person has this physical advantage, welcome to sports, baby. That's what it is. The taller players do better in the sports where the objective is in the air. So yes, obviously his physical form helped him a lot more than everybody else. It makes it no less impressive that he did it. I don't think they should have run that challenge though.
I will say I think there are definitely things that they could have done to make it easier. I think you can still get them in the water, but yeah, I would agree that don't start them on the buoys and have them swim in. I think that was a little too dangerous. And the only reason I felt confident that no one was drowning was because I'm like, this is a very weird edit if someone does drown. Like that would be a very weird thing to watch.
Yeah. Celebrating the greatness of Jonathan. Oh no. Yeah. But
I will say I think like they could have made it easier just by like having fewer knots to untie the ladder. Like you didn't need the full string. If they had started on the beach, right, and then like ran out maybe with the ladder just to crawl up and get the key and then come immediately back. Like there were ways to make it easier. I didn't get the sense that they edited the challenge at all, even as the swells were like basically knocking people off the buoy before they even said go.
Yeah, in an interview with Dalton Ross, Probst even said like they couldn't even stand on there. We had them all sit on the pontoon, and it's like we're just going to say go, and you get up and go because if they're trying to surf, Jonathan wouldn't, but a lot of them would fall. I mean, in general, I think the challenge would be fine if the water was still that day. And I think this, like, it's a common thing for Survivor that sometimes they do not do challenges as scheduled because the water is not cooperating. In fact, that's sometimes why they make sure not to have too many water challenges. I think they've gotten comfortable with the Fiji water, they think. But this one, I think they should have delayed. And I'm guessing the waters picked up quickly on them. Like maybe they got to the challenge site, everything was fine. And then it's like, okay, because it kept getting worse as the challenge went on. Now, I'm not going to fully criticize. I don't think it was completely reckless. They did stop it before anyone got hurt. They do have safety swimmers. So they ended up doing the right thing. So I think, I'm not criticizing them from a safety standpoint, but I do think that like if they had to do it all over again, today wasn't the day for the challenge. Save this one. And I do wonder if this is what happens when the schedule is sped up, because normally you just be like, well, it's not a challenge day today. We'll do this challenge tomorrow, but that's an entirely different episode. And you only have one challenge to go. So I wonder if it's that they caught not having an alternative because they did, maybe the weather report said there wasn't going to be, but in general, it shouldn't have been that hard. And I don't I don't know if the structure in itself was hard. I think it was hard in this environment. And thus, sometimes you got to pull the plug on something. And because it would have probably been an awesome challenge otherwise, but at least we got to see how awesome Jonathan was. Like, sadly, he was so awesome that now he probably can't win. And I know, and Probst also in his interview said, like, I almost didn't want to call Jonathan out, but I'm like, I think they've been no. I don't think he was telling the rest of the competitors anything that they didn't know, that this guy was doing the impossible.
Right. And again, I think that it comes back to what's good for us as the viewer. It was entertaining. And as much as you try not to buy into like the pros overselling and overhyping certain certain challenge performances, like anytime some mom crosses the balance beam, it's like, this is the biggest act of perseverance. But it's like, this was legendary. It deserved the call that it got. And honestly, I don't, like you said, I don't think they're Probst is adding anything that the people don't already know. He's very clearly the most athletic person on the cast, regardless of whatever Probst says at this particular challenge. He will be targeted for being a challenge beast at some point later in the game.
Yeah, quiet. I've been hiding behind this tree. No. There's no hiding for Jonathan. Yeah, normally we don't talk about challenges, but this is what I like in challenges. When I can see excellence, that's all I want, is every once in a while just be like, oh man, that person really did it. And he really did. So we're focused on a tribal council where only 4 people could vote. Let's talk about one where only 2 people might be able to vote. What's going to happen on Taku? Marianne currently does not have a vote, and Omer, who almost certainly will not tell his alliance that he doesn't have a vote because he should think that he has to. He should be like guaranteed I have it because the person I was there with said that they were not going to risk their vote.
Right. But, so in terms of next week, I mean, I think there's a lot of funny ways that only 2 people voting can turn out, but I'm sort of sad to say I think we're going to get the boring one, which is that Jonathan and Lindsay just vote Marianne. Yeah. Like Omer and Jonathan are close, Jonathan and Lindsay are close. That creates a trio that is going to be hard to break up just by Marianne alone. So unless Omer or Lindsay get really squirrely and really want to make a big move, which I can't see why you would, especially when I think Lindsay is already pretty annoyed with Marianne just by the way she behaves. Like, I don't see any way that you get around just Marianne going out 2-0.
Yeah. I mean, the way obviously is if she activates her idol.
Right.
But that's the thing. They know because Marianne has not hid anything from them. They will know if that happens, in which case then that could be pretty interesting because then it could be 2-2. But a 2-2 in which Omar believes that he might actually have 2 himself. So it'd be kind of funny if, like, say, him and Jonathan engineer a split vote to protect against Marianne's idol with Lindsay. And Omar was the one that was supposed to be voting for Marianne. That could be interesting. Because
I do definitely want to see that scene where, like, Omar goes into the booth prepared to vote, maybe not even with the extra vote, but just vote at all, sees that he can vote, and then is stuck there for 10 minutes trying to figure out, okay, if Jonathan voted here and Lindsay voted there, where are the numbers that I have to put and how do I get out of this? I'd like to see it.
Yeah, you might have the same confused face Hi had this one. All right, so besides Hi, who else is standing out for you so far this season? Not just with this episode, but the 3 that we've gotten so far.
Right. Just by the baseline definition of stand out, I think you have to say that Marianne stands out just from everyone else in the cast.
What's your Marianne take? I've obviously shared mine. I believe everybody shared one. I think that'll have to be a thing as long as she's on and as long as I keep having different co-hosts. Well, what's your take on Marianne?
Oh, she's a nice girl. I mean, I definitely, I will say this. Whoever can capture GIFs, like off of whatever media player they watch Survivor on, I would like a GIF of Marianne saying, frig, shiz. Like, I just want one of those with the caption underneath. She's a nice girl, but I mean, she doesn't got the chops to play this game. And she reminds me actually a lot of a former student. Not in a way that makes me super fond of her, but not in a way that makes me hate her. But I'm like, just
bless her heart. Would be the Midwest.
Yeah, and you're very enthusiastic and good for you.
Honestly, everything you said was like almost unnecessary after your like that is the Marianne reaction. It's like I she's so sweet and I want to like her and I kind of do, but also
it's very like being asked about racist babies. It's very much the same reaction.
Well, those babies shouldn't be racist. I don't know why they keep getting so much press. Anyone else?
I will say Jonathan and Omer. I think individually, that they're fine. They could be something. I think the pair of them together, right, with that dichotomy could be interesting. Lindsay, I haven't gotten a strong impression of, and I'm assuming she's the third in that trio. But as a group, I mean, we don't always want to keep bringing it back to JT and Fishbach, right? But like it is that odd couple pairing that when they start to do damage, it's something that's interesting. Actually, we should stop saying JT and Fishbach. I feel like Denise and Malcolm were the more recent version of the odd couple. We should be citing Denise and Malcolm more, especially given the legacy of JT's decline throughout the years.
Yeah. I guess what it is that JT and Steven seem so much more odd couple-y than did Malcolm and Denise. Ultimately, they didn't seem like on paper, man, woman, older, younger, but like they had similar sensibilities and all of that. So as their pairing grew, it felt less odd. Whereas, JT and Steven all the way through. Right. Yeah, I mean, Omer had good moments this episode away from Jonathan. Like, you see it with him and Chanelle, that it's like, clearly like people just get a vibe from him and feel good. Although maybe that's too much credit, because like, when has somebody come off of like Shipwheel Island and all that? It's like, man, that person, I can't stand them at all, and I'm never going to work with them. Maybe the closest was like Tiffany and Sydney at night, but that's a night trek is no trek. They didn't trek.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you trek, then you're friends for life and you're sharing a life story with them. So maybe too much credit for one more, because I do agree. It's the two of them together that's far more interesting. I mean, I guess Ica is a tribe. They weren't on this episode, and I'm fine with it. But from previous episodes, any kind of standouts there, positive or negative?
Well, no, I don't think so. I always have a hard time knowing if I actually know the people on Ica, and just that, like, I know there's 5 of them. I'm like, wait, do the names I know add up to 5? I feel like I'm forgetting someone. Like, that's always the reaction that I have when I have to think about Ica. So in that sense, no, I don't think anyone has stood out yet. If you press me on it, I would say Drea stands out the most of the people on Ica, but to the point that, she's front of mind when I think about this cast. We're not there yet. I think she could be, but just not at the moment.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's just because she's doing the most, right? And
right.
I guess has the most with the potential advantages. Any other thoughts for the episode?
No, it was great, and that's about it.
Yeah, I think we covered it. If you have any other thoughts, dear listener, you can share them with us. Our website is purplerockpodcast.com. You can communicate through Twitter. The site is at Purple Rock Pod. Maybe one day it'll start tweeting again. I am at Purple Rock Andy. You?
I am at Purple Rock Brad.
Yeah. It's like a company where you can just guess, first name dot last name dot at company. That's how we do here. You need to have 4 letters in your name or you're not part of the gang. Even if you have to change your name. That's how it works. Like and subscribe all the places or whatever. I think that's enough. Let me hit some theme music.
Yeah.